Hello, everyone, and welcome to the presentation, The Revised Common Rule, What You Need to Know Now. My name is Rob Romanchuk, and I'm a research professional with experience in management and protection of human research protections in the research arena. My role has spanned the creation and management of central research offices in large community health systems and recent activity as both an IRB member and chairperson. Today we'll be covering the following topics. First, we'll appraise the breadth and depth of the revised Common Rule in its final form. I'll make an effort to distinguish the individual changes to each clinical research professional's role as impacted by this revised Common Rule. We'll identify the challenges and obstacles that have already been encountered to implementing the Common Rule. And then I hope you'll find workable solutions to the application of the revised Common Rule in your own job role. It's helpful to start with the big picture. So the revised Common Rule replaces a rule that's been in place for decades, and it only supports research that's funded by or sponsored by the Department of Health and Human Services and its associated divisions. Is located in the Federal Register at 45 CFR 46.102 through 124. It's important to note, at least at this point in time, that it does not apply to FDA-regulated research. However, the 21st Century Cures Act, Section 3023, mandates that harmonization between the revised Common Rule and the FDA regulations must occur no later than 3 years after the enactment of this act. And we'll talk more about that later. Since the original Common Rule, which is now decades old, several developments have taken place in the interim that have really made the need for a revised Common Rule absolutely necessary. For example, there's been a huge increase in the development of biorepositories where biospecimens, de-identified and identifiable, have been stored and ready for researchers. There's also been a proliferation of electronic medical records containing all kinds of clinical data that could be analyzed and used for research purposes. At the same time, we've also developed the technology to do whole genome and exome sequencing, and all kinds of research that's been built up around that. There's also been challenges presented by all of the developments in the digital age, especially around the considerations of privacy and confidentiality. And then we've also seen a big increase in collaborative and multi-institutional research, all of these demanding some kind of guidance or regulation so that everybody's working from the same page. There have also been many controversial events that have taken place in the interim years. Some of them have had a big impact on how people think and feel about research itself. For example, you may be aware of the Henrietta Lacks story. Henrietta was an African-American woman whose cancer cells were turned into an immortalized human cell line that has been manufactured and used for great profit in the medical community. Her cells were obtained without consent, and neither she nor her family were compensated for their extraction or use. And so this event, and there have been others like it, have caused real changes in the way the public thinks about the use of biospecimens and information in research. There have also been some large breaches of protected health information that have affected the way people feel about use of their data. And so these are accommodated as well in the revised Common Rule. So the preamble to the revised Common Rule clearly states the goals behind the revision. Number one, to better protect human rights. After all, that's their mission. To modernize requirements to accommodate all of those interim developments that we discussed. To facilitate research. So the regulators really don't want to hamper research, they want to facilitate it. to remove ambiguities, and there were admittedly many in the previous rule, and hopefully to reduce the regulatory burden, both on researchers and on IRBs. I'll let you decide for yourself how well you think it's accomplished those goals in the way it's played out. The road to approval for the revised Common Rule was not a simple one. It started way back in 2011 with the advance notice of proposed rulemaking, which, as is the case with every one of these proposals, is followed by a comment period where all those impacted by the proposed rule can make their observations. The notice of proposed rulemaking was released in September 2015 with a five-month comment period that stretched out to a couple years. And then finally, the final rule was issued in January 2017 with the initial plan to implement it by January of 2018, with some of the features of the rule delayed, like single IRB review, delayed until January 2020. Well, this didn't happen, as you well know. And so the interim final rule was effective in January 22nd of 2018, which delayed the compliance date for 6 months to July of that year. And so finally, they allowed some burden reducing provisions to get us to the final goal. And then finally, in January 2019, the final rule goes into effect. So it had a real impact on institutions trying to get ready and implement the revised rule, because they had to change a lot of things in infrastructure and process. And with delays, there were a lot of fits and starts. But fortunately, that's all behind us.